Greetings everyone and welcome to a new bounding box tutorial. We will be recreating this effect inspired by the Netflix series 3-Body Problem. We're gonna go to Mixamo and we're gonna search for the mannequin character. This one right here. And then we're going to go to animations and search for a crawl animation. Let's use this one. I'm just going to slow it down a bit, turn the overdrive to 20 and increase the total length of the animation. Great, so let's download it. So after I downloaded the file, I'm gonna import it into 3ds Max. Be sure to have the animation checkbox. Open the outliner and move the character in a new special layer. In order to have everything cleaner, I'm gonna point cache the character. Add a point cache modifier, save the point cache, hit record, and now you can delete the skin modifier and you can delete all the bones. Now we have the mesh. We can start doing the setup. So create a new layer, give it a name, create a TyFlow object, create a point helper. This point helper is going to be our activator. I'm going to name it activator. This is going to activate our particles, and we're going to use its local z value to compare to the position of the particles. Now I'm going to rotate it so the z-axis is pointing this way, and I'm going to animate this point, go from here to here. So now inside our TyFlow, make a little bit of space here. First we're going to create an event using a birth surface. We choose the character mesh. We give this event a particle group of 1 and use the object bind operator to bind the particles to the mesh. Choose lock to surface and vertex as a sample. We don't need rotation. Now we're going to make a new event using a birth object operator. We choose the mesh again. We can hide it now. And we're going to use the close bind operator. Give this particle the group of 2. So we can use this operator called object test and pick the helper we created called activator. Choose test true if below local z and send the particles to another event. So now when the helper passes them, particles go to the new event. First we need these close particles to be binded to the mesh before they get activated. So let's do that by linking them to the particles created in the first event. We're gonna use a set target operator, choose target from neighbors, absolute closest, and filter them by simulation group, choosing simulation groups 1. Now check the link to target checkbox. I changed the time configuration from real time to frame by frame, so we can see the simulation better. So now we want to unlink particles when they go to the new event. So add a link to target operator, but choose unlink. Make the display operators instances and choose small dots. Hide the particles in the first event. So now the particles get activated and they get unlinked from their targets. I like to add a slow operator, helps calm down velocities. Cool, maybe drop it down to 5. Add a particle bind operator in this event. Change the ID to 1, increase the stiffness, and disable the proximity bind and enable the bind to target. So now the particles will be binded to their target, but not linked. So we can modify these bindings and animate their properties. Gonna add a modify bindings operator, change the timing to continuous, add a filter and choose by ID, set it to be 1. So this way we're gonna affect only this binding. We're gonna want to affect the stiffness and set it to 0. So check stretch, shear and bend and set that to 0. And change the interpolation to 0.2. Now the bindings are gonna soften up gradually after they enter this event. After a while, we're gonna want these particle bindings to disappear, to break. So let's add a particle break operator. Set it to all, filter it, and set the filter by ID to 1. And set the timing to event age, and delete them when the event age gets to 30. So after 30 frames of entering this event, that binding is going to break. Let's add a force so we can use it as gravity and set it to minus 0.5. Okay, we're gonna need a ground, so make a plane add a collision operator and choose the plane. So some particles get stuck under the plane because the animation is not quite aligned to the plane. So we're gonna add a push in out operator just after the unlink operator and choose the plane. Set it to face accurate. Give it small value like 0.1. So now they get pushed out before they collide. Let's increase the timeline a bit, 10 frames. Great, so now we can add another modify bindings operator. This time we're going to affect the first bindings, the one created by the cloth bind operator. Their ID is 0. So filter it by ID, set it to 0, set its timing to continuous. And we're going to want to use the inflation forces. Set it to -3 and set the event age is in. Set it to 25. Maybe that's a bit too much. Set it to -0.5. Okay, great for now. Something else I want to add is a sort of map to control some materials. We can blend two materials for the part that's dehydrating from the part that's still normal. So add a custom properties in this event right here. Choose by value, let's call it mask, and leave the value 0. Now add a mapping operator. Choose the type to mapping from custom float. Here in the channel, choose the mask float, and let's set it to map channel 0. Good for now. So now add another custom properties in this last event. Choose by value, choose the mask channel. Let's disable the flow for just a second. Right click, choose disable flow. Choose the operator again, the custom properties operator. Go to timing and select continuous. Press N or click on auto key. Go to frame 30 and change the value to 1. And in the keyframes tab, choose the event age synchronization. Turn off auto key. Now add a mapping operator below the custom properties. Change the timing to continuous. Choose mapping from custom float. Choose the mask channel. Set the channel to 0. Enable the flow again. So now we we're gonna have a mask we can use to blend between two textures. You can visualize it by adding a vertex paint operator. Here you can click on the vertex color display. You're gonna see the red channel because we only write in the X value of the UV map. So you can use this information to mask between two textures. We're gonna turn this off for now. So right now the simulation doesn't look quite great because we need a lot of sub steps, and other than sub steps we also need the CUDA collision solver, which can detect cloth-to-cloth collisions. So enable the CUDA collision solver and enable the self collisions. Maybe increase the thickness a little bit. That depends on your scene scale. You can check by creating a sphere or a box, see what values you have. So let's say for me a value of 0.5 I think is a good thickness. So I'm gonna go with 0.5. I don't think I need any friction, so I'm gonna turn that to 0. And other than that, we have to increase the time step a lot. So I'm gonna try 12 time steps per frame. So I'm gonna hit play and let it simulate. So I just came back from a 3ds Max crash. I always forget that with this version of TyFlow, the beta version, when using custom floats or vectors or matrices, it's good to check the cache for them. If you don't do that, you might get crashes when you scrub. Also, when using the CUDA solver, I'm not sure, but I think it helps to check the only collide if particle seams groups are overlapping in this case, because we don't want them to overlap with the particles in this event. Also, add a particle switch operator to this first event. So right now I'm gonna hit play again and let it simulate. So I stopped the simulation again because I forgot to change some values that helped me get a better results before. So in the cloth bind operator, change the stretch and the shear value to 0.8 and the bend to 0.3, and also increase the dampening in the binding properties to 0.1. In the modify bindings operator that controls the inflation, change that to -2. Okay, set the time step back to maybe 8 steps per frame and let it simulate. Back again. So because I was getting some nasty collisions with the ground plane, this was slowing down the simulation quite a bit. So I had to move the ground plane down so I don't get so many intersections with the mesh. Right now the simulation should go a bit more smoothly. I'm gonna go with maybe 16 steps per frame, and yeah, let's try again. back again. So I was still getting some bad collisions and performance issues along with that. So the way to fix that was I added a shell modifier to the ground plane, gave it an inner amount of 4 or maybe more, like 5, and I added some fixes to my character. So we added a TySelect modifier, was the selection method to mesh and choose the ground plane as a selection. I increased the accuracy of the selection to 6 and sample by face accurate. So this is gonna give us a selection when the mesh is intersecting with the ground plane. Then I added a TyConform modifier, choose the use vertex selection option, and gave it a bit of an offset. So right now the mesh doesn't intersect with the ground plane anymore. And I also point cached the mesh with this modifiers active, made a new point cache, added a different name so it doesn't overwrite the old one. And now we have the point cached mesh with the fixes for the intersection. So this should give us better results. Let's increase the timeline to 120 frames and leave it to 60 steps per frame. And also maybe in the modify bindings that affects the inflation, maybe increase the deflation to -3, and let's give it another go. So here we are back, the simulation is done. It's looking pretty good for demonstration purposes. The simulation doesn't have errors anymore, and we also have the vertex color info we can use to blend between two materials. I've prepared a demonstration material here. It's a mix between checkers and cellular texture, and the mix amount is controlled by a vertex color map, set map channel 0 and the channel red. So we can assign this material, and you're not going to see it in the viewport, but we can render it, and we're going to see the blending between the two textures, like so. So this has been the tutorial. Hope you had fun creating this with me, and I hope you have a lot of fun rendering this. So see you again with another tutorial. Bye bye.